morning, my dear students, distinguished key speaker, participants, and everyone. Welcome you all to the inaugural lecture of BUP Law Lecture Series 2018 and the beautiful campus of Bangladesh University of Professionals. Today, we are very glad to have among us Dr. Mohammad Shahabuddin as a keynote speaker of inaugural lecture of BUP Law Lecture Series 2018. Our dean sir, Brigadier General Siddiqullah and our chairman sir, Lieutenant Colonel Shahabuddin Ahmed, they are attending academic council meeting, so we are expecting them in between the lecture. So before I invite our keynote speaker to deliver his speech, I would like to request our lecturer, our colleague, Abu Siddiq, coordinator, LLM Masters of Law Professional Program, to welcome the speakers and to give his welcome speech. Please welcome lecturer Abu Siddiq.
It's a proud privilege for me to be here to welcome such an intellectual person of our nation, Dr. Mohammad Shahabuddin sir. Even though the dean or chairman is not present here, since I'm representing the department, on behalf of the dean, Faculty of Security and Strategic Studies, as well as the chairman, Dr. Ahmed, myself, I'm heartily welcoming to the most renowned intellectual academician of the nations who is actually serving and making us proud even in England. Dr. Mohammad Shahabuddin is no introduction, but for the part of the department, I can say that it's a very new university, and we cannot actually bring the best out of it if we do not get the support from the academician like him or any other future initiative. So I believe even though our students they haven't yet completed their final year of study, even a batch is not has not passed from this department. They know very little about international law, but I guess after the lecture, they can, think quite a bit how interesting international law can be, and how international law can serve to settle a lot of international dispute and also instigate the citizenship issues as well. So after the seminar or the workshop, I believe you can think to us that the way you are studying and the way you should. I'm not going to prolong my speech with this little speech. I also welcome the other members, the participants who is not from BP. I also know that we have Master of Laws students over here. It will be beneficial for you too. Please do not hesitate to ask any question that is sticking in your mind regarding the subject mentioned in the series. With this, I also thank the organizer and the contact persons, Imran, and all the faculty members of the department. I hope we can actually make the best out of this workshop. Thank you very much.
For your welcome speech. As you know, that Dr. Shahabuddin will deliver his lecture on the topic titled Postcolonial Boundaries, International Law, and the Making of the Rohingya Crisis in Myanmar. Before I invite our keynote speaker to give his lecture, let me very briefly introduce him with all of you present here. Dr. Mohammad Shahabuddin is a reader in international law and human rights at Birmingham Law School, University of Birmingham. Prior to joining Birmingham, he served Yale University as a lecturer in law, Yokohama National University as a visiting professor of international law, and the Jamnagar University as the founding chair of its Department of Law and Justice. He is a junior faculty member for Harvard Law School's Institute for Global Law and Policy (IGLP) workshop since 2013. He is the author of Ethnicity and International Law, Histories, Politics and Practice, published by Cambridge University Press in 2016. Dr. Shahabuddin's research interests include history, working on a new book project that is Minorities and the Making of Postcolonial States in International Law, under the Leverhulme Trust Research Fellowship 2018 to 2020, and it is expected that the book will be published by the Cambridge University Press in 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Mohammad Shahabuddin to give his inaugural lecture in BUP Law Lecture Series 2018.
Can you hear me in the back? Can you hear me in the back? Right. Thank you both to Mr. Siddiq and Mr. Azad for the kind introduction. And I don't deserve most of the kind words they have used for me. So thank you very much nonetheless. It is indeed my great pleasure and privilege to be here, to be invited as the keynote speaker for the inaugural Bangladesh University of Professionals Law Lecture Series 2018. I express my sincerest thanks to the Chairman of this department, Lieutenant Colonel Richard Sirajuddin Ahmed, PSC, for his kind invitation. Also thank Mr. Imran Azad and his wonderful colleagues here and student volunteers who were very kind to travel to other side of the city to pick me up this morning. So thank you for your hospitality. I need to mention that some other young colleagues from this department participated in a number of research events in Dhaka that I was involved with. So in that sense, my relationship with BUP should not be really gauged by my maiden visit today. And I believe following this visit, our relationship will only strengthen. I would also like to thank the audience for making a huge sacrifice, meaning sacrificing your other commitments and engagements today to make yourself available here. So I feel honored and privileged for that too. Now, going back to the topic that I'll be talking about today is post-colonial boundaries, international law, and the making of the Rohingya crisis in Myanmar. Now, the recent persecution of the Rohingya minority has been described by the United Nations Human Rights Council first as a textbook example of ethnic cleansing, and then, within a few months, as a potential case of genocide. And recently, in its report of August 2018, just 2 months back, the independent fact-finding mission on Myanmar, established by the UN Human Rights Council, is working on. Human Rights Council concluded that Myanmar army has committed war crimes and crimes against humanity in Rakhine State, and also, I quote them, there is sufficient information to warrant the investigation and prosecution of senior officials in Myanmar Army chain of command, so that a competent court can determine their liability for genocide in relation to the situation in Rakhine State. So that tells a lot about the gravity of the situation. International norms devised to protect the rights of minorities and to protect individuals from statelessness, together with the recently developed framework of responsibility to protect, R2P, all suggest that international law offers a solution to this tragic predicament of the Rohingya, the problem being the lack of enforcement. Right? So international law is there, it has its own norms, rules. The only problem is implementation. This paper, in contrast, is premised upon the general argument that international law, in many cases, has paradoxically facilitated a number of humanitarian catastrophes of this kind in the world. It's just the opposite of the general conventional wisdom about the emancipatory potential of international law. This is because of how international law constructs post-colonial statehood, and that's the theme in today's talk. In other words, international law, as I see it, is a part of the problem as much as it is the part of the solution. And I would encourage you to take this point seriously, because this is the core idea behind this project. I repeat, international law is a part of the problem as much as it is the part of the solution. And as a student from this country, or precisely from the third world, when you engage with international law, This is just an example that I'll be sharing with you. It's an example to demonstrate how to engage with international law critically. Not simply to think that international law is there to solve all the problems, but that to think about international law as a tool of our global power politics that in fact sustains the mutual power relations, and in many cases, like this one, creates problems. Let me explain how. The embrace and adoption of the Western concept of the nation state that was prerequisite for becoming a sovereign state demanded a transformation of indigenous perception of sovereignty and political communities, and not all states were successful in making those changes without experiencing ongoing ethnic tensions, and in some cases, long and devastating civil wars. Sri Lanka would be another example. Nation-building projects in most post-colonial states faced the challenging task of reconciling two diverging forces in this process of constructing post-colonial statehood. On the one hand, you have nationalism. On the other hand, you have liberal universalism. Now, nationalism not only served as the vehicle of liberation movements against colonial rule, but was also the key to independent statehood. Post-World War II liberal universalism, in contrast, promised a post-ethnic world order and became a template for the internal organization of post-colonial states. The post-World War II phase of international law was indeed set for informing faith in and promoting certain crucial values: fundamental human rights, dignity and worth of individuals, equal rights for men and women, and of nations large and small, among others. In this era, however, progress equated to liberal values, and universalism simply meant the imposition of these values at a global scale. Thus, since the inception of the UN, United Nations, an individualist notion of human rights has become the dominant vocabulary through which the concept of minority is expressed. It appeared convincing to replace the minority protection system with the human rights regime exclusively centered on the universal protection of individual rights. So here we are talking about two diverging forces. On the one hand, you have nationalism, which is seen as archaic, traditional. On the other hand, you have these universal liberal values and systems. Now, these two diverging forces operated within the political boundaries that were arbitrarily drawn by colonial powers and inherited by post-colonial states at the time of decolonization. In the absence of stable democratic institutions, subsequent nation-building projects and the ensuing suppression of ethnic groups were outside the state-sponsored national culture, like the Burmese culture in Myanmar, went often unchallenged. The difficulties of post-colonial statehood have been most notable in Africa, where boundaries were drawn with no regard for political and social realities on the ground. Similar problems, however, accompanied the independence of Asian countries from colonial rule. The recent Rohingya crisis in Myanmar is an archetypical example of this trend. Post-colonial states are essentially the creation via colonization and decolonization of the international legal norms and associated rules crafted by European states, primarily. International law has contributed to the formation of post-colonial statehood and the ensuing atrocities in a number of ways, involving a wide range of issues such as drawing of the post-colonial boundaries, number one, responses to nationalist aspiration of oppressed minorities, number two, the question of citizenship and statelessness, and more importantly, economic liberalization and prioritization of economic development over human rights. It also involves humanitarian assistance, or the politics of humanitarian assistance, intervention, and crisis management. So international law involves a wide range of issues that helps create this kind of problems or catastrophes, human catastrophes, as opposed to the conventional wisdom, which is to some extent right, that international law itself can solve those problems. As I said before, it's both part of the problem and the solution. Now, in today's paper, the paper I'll be sharing with you, my ongoing project, deals precisely with international involvement with the making of postcolonial boundaries. So at the beginning I talked about a list of things through which international law operates and engages with postcolonial states and the kind of impact it creates in terms of humanitarian disasters. This paper is specifically dealing with the question of postcolonial boundaries. In other words, there is no suggestion here in my talk that this boundary is the only reason for the problem in Rohingya in Myanmar regarding the Rohingya crisis. Rather, it is one of many problems or many reasons or the avenues in which international law engages. Right? Now, let's talk about the boundary. The problem of colonial boundaries has been widely discussed in relation to conflicts in Africa. Those borders have been established in accordance with the legal principle of uti possidetis, it's a Latin term, uti possidetis, I'll come to that later, which dictates, and this is the principle, which dictates that colonial border must be respected, meaning what happens with the border under colonial rule, when you get independence, those borders will continue. Right? If you decide to exchange the border with mutual consent, that's fine. In the absence of any such treaty, colonial borders will continue. This principle is called uti possidetis. It can have both versions, uti possidetis juris or uti possidetis de facto, but we are not going there. This principle has been adopted in order to curtail ongoing ethnic conflicts in Africa. In this article, however, exploring the origins of uti possidetis and its extension to Asia, I demonstrate the questionable legal status of the uti possidetis principle and also the fallacy of its conflict evading potential. In contrast to the conventional wisdom that uti possidetis is essential for settling boundary disputes among post-colonial states and thereby maintaining peace and order. That's the whole idea behind uti possidetis, because you have to continue colonial border to maintain peace. I argue that, in contrast, uti possidetis itself is a key problem. Far from being a corrective to potential disorder, so-called disorder, emanating from decolonization, the continuation of arbitrarily drawn colonial boundaries undermines the legitimate right to self-determination of numerous ethnic minorities in post-colonial states and often results in violent ethnic conflicts. Its embrace by post-colonial Asian states, in this case Myanmar, has further rather than curtailed violence. In this connection, I also argue that the current violence suffered by the Rohingya cannot be understood except by studying the complex history of Rakhine State and its relationship with pre-colonial Britain and Burma, of course, and of course the British Empire. It is this history which created the colonial boundaries that are still enforced in ways that preserve an insecure post-colonial state which has systematically oppressed the Rohingya people, and obviously genocide is the result. Now, let me first talk about the international law and post-colonial boundaries, and then I will talk about the specific case of the making of post-colonial Myanmar and the role of international law in making boundaries. So what is the governing principles of international law regarding post-colonial boundaries? For the interwar period, meaning the period between two world wars, the notion of self-determination was closely associated with the protection of minorities. In the aftermath of the Second World War, the idea of self-determination was primarily expressed through decolonization. In fact, as Rosalind Higgins demonstrates, before that claim for decolonization gained prominence in the discourse on self-determination, the mention of self-determination in the UN Charter simply meant equal rights of all states to non-interference in their internal affairs, the so-called external aspects of self-determination. It was through the activism of the new states of Asia and Africa in the General Assembly that the concept of self-determination turned into the moral and legal force behind decolonization. Now for this audience, if you wonder what this idea of self-determination means, it simply means the right to decide your political affairs in your own way. Now the idea came first in 1919 with the US President Woodrow Wilson, group had a very specific context in mind. But that created a challenge for imperial powers like Britain and France, who were not ready to sacrifice their colonies. Right? So it was very much focused on the European cases at that time. But after the Second World War, when United Nations was established, this right was given to all former colonies, that with the application of this right to self-determination, all states will get independence. It became problematic, and this is what I'll be telling now. Because what does this right mean to various groups within a former colony? Right? So, when you had this idea of self-determination for all former colonies, at the same time, nationalist elites, often representing the majority interests in these countries, saw themselves as the legitimate and sole successors of colonial rule, and conceived of the colonial state as a necessary mode of transition to a modern post-colonial states. As early as 1947, in the Asian Relations Conference in Delhi, all the delegates had consensus on the absolute acceptance of the nation-state mode, that the right to self-determination belongs to the entire colonial entity, not to any minority groups therein. Consequently, it also emerged that the Asian political entities, soon to be free, were uniformly represented as states composed as national majorities joined by ethnic and cultural minorities. So the application in that moment of 1945 and then decolonization moment of 1960s, it was accepted that the mode is going to be the nation state as a whole, the bearer of self-determination as a right, and all other smaller groups are going to be permanent minorities in those states as long as they don't completely dissolve and assimilate into that majoritarian idea of nation. The normative need for continuity from the colonial state to the post-colonial nation state to be governed by nationalist elites, and the pragmatic need to avoid letting chaos arise from decolonization were both addressed by the international law principle of duty positivities, that is, maintaining colonial borders for post-colonial states. Thus, while the ethnic notion of self-determination in Paris Peace Conference of 1919 attempted to undo established borders in order to create states along ethnic lines, that was the interwar period, right, under the League of Nations. What happened under the UN? The application of duty positivities principles cemented the territorial borders that had been arbitrarily drawn by the colonial powers and enforced the multi-ethnic composition of the post-colonial states. I'm not claiming that that was essentially bad, but it has some implications, of course. The Colonial Declaration of 1960, the declaration that claimed independence for all former colonies in General Assembly, led by Nehru and all other people, it proclaimed, and that's the interesting bit, they proclaimed that all peoples have the right to self-determination, and that by virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural independence. Meaning, they are asking for independence from former colonial masters. But at the same time, the declaration stipulated that all states shall faithfully and strictly respect the sovereign rights of all peoples and their territorial integrity. Territorial integrity, meaning the transfer of all colonial territory to the new post-colonial state without disturbing it, and also made it explicit that any attempt aimed at the partial or total disruption of the national unity and the territorial integrity of a country is incompatible with the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations. As the comment of the Moroccan delegate in the drafting process of the declaration reveals, the Asian and African states that drafted the declaration were concerned about the attempts by colonial powers, in line with their long-standing policy of divide and rule, to carve out colonies that were in the process of achieving independence. So the Katanga crisis that was unfolding at that time would be a classic example, why they suspected that any deviation from this territorial integrity principle will disturb the independence as a whole. And again, it's a colonial mode of divide and rule. The emphasis on territorial integrity was a clear attempt to counter such colonial practices. However, this has simultaneously restricted the application of self-determination to various minority groups and their nationalist aspiration for independent statehood, thereby reinforced the colonial borders in Asia and Africa. Likewise, subsequent General Assembly resolutions as well as decisions of the International Court of Justice also unequivocally declared the primacy of territorial integrity of states over ethnic claims for self-determination. The old opposition between self-determination on the one hand and self-determination and possibilities lost its decisive import by reason of the impossibility of self-determination, meaning anything but independence within integrated borders. Once the self has been identified, any determination could operate only within the parameters of its own existence. Thomas Frank, the celebrated international lawyer, sees this pattern as a move towards reconciliation. In his words, the disintegration of Spanish imperialism in Latin America, where this idea of multipositives was invented, I'll talk about that later. The disintegration of Spanish imperialism in America produced the norm of multipositives. The end of the German, Austrian, and Ottoman empires during the interwar period gave rise to self-determination. In the post-1945 era, multipositives and self-determination were refined and synthesized into a doctrine of decolonization, unquote. So this is how he explained this transition from Latin American experience to the 1945 moment of self-determination and multipositives. In this reconciliation, however, multipositives clearly trumped over the principle of self-determination so far as minority groups now entangled in post-colonial states are concerned. The modern formulation of the multipositives principle is traditionally associated with the decolonization of Central and South American countries in the 19th century, early 19th century, when the newly independent Latin American states mutually agreed, in some cases, to adopt former Spanish administrative lines as their new international boundaries. The practice came to be known as the implementation of multipositives. Although in Roman law, this idea had a very different civil law meaning as a temporary remedy for property disputes. But when Latin American countries decide to continue with Spanish colonial borders, this idea came to be known as multipositives in a modern context. The principle of multipositives reappeared again in the interwar period in relation to the dispute between Finland and Sweden over the Alan Islands case, the very famous international law case. You will study this in your fourth year. In this case, the Commission of Reporters, as opposed to the Commission of Jurists, appointed by the League of Nations, held that since the Alan Islands were part of Finland under the Tsarist Russia, upon Finnish independence, the application of multipositives principle should guarantee Finland's pre-independence territory. Therefore, the Alan Islands were transferred to Finland as opposed to Sweden on the basis of this idea of the continuity of colonial boundaries. Against this backdrop, the centrality of the multipositives principle in the international legal imagination of boundaries of new states soon got stronger foothold in the context of African decolonization. When in 1964, the member states of the Organization of African Unity, now known as African Union, in line with the European Union, everyone has to follow European trend, pledged to respect the colonial boundaries existing at the time of independence. The International Court of Justice and many commentators viewed the resolution as further evidence of the role of multipositives in the process of decolonization. Although prior to independence, many African political parties advocated the readjustment of these artificial boundaries to accord with local realities, because colonial boundaries were drawn arbitrarily, so on and so forth, so there was an attempt. But such revisionist claims lost ground as African colonies started emerging as independent states and prioritized a peaceful transition to statehood. The Charter of the African Unity, now Union, affirmed in Article 3 that every member's adherence to respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity of each state and for its inalienable right to independent existence. So again, the sacred nature of boundaries that cannot be altered. In a meeting in Cairo the following year, the OAU, Organization of African Unity, adopted a resolution reaffirming the strict respect by all member states of the organization for the principles laid down in Article 3, Paragraph 3 of the Charters, and declared that all member states pledge themselves to respect the frontiers existing on their achievement of national sovereignty and independence. It is generally believed that this acceptance of the continuity of the colonial boundaries or borders represents the Latin American principle of unity possibilities applied in the African context. Thus, through the operation of international law, the boundaries of colonial Africa, drawn at the Berlin Conference of late 19th century, without any regard whatsoever to demographics or culture, but based on astronomical and mathematical criteria set in Berlin, or by reference to prominent physical features, came to be the permanent boundaries of post-colonial African states. Now, no wonder one African scholar, Mohammad Shahabuddin, published a piece, a controversial piece on why redraw the map of Africa. So he is in favor of redrawing map of Africa and push back against the idea of unity possibilities, but that's a different context. This view that the unity possibilities principle should be applied in governing post-colonial territorial delimitation was shared by the ICJ International Court of Justice Chamber in the Burkina Faso versus Mali case, in which the chamber declared that unity possibilities was a general principle. So it started in Latin America, had some moment in Europe, and then in Africa, and before the ICJ, it became the general principle of international law. This is what the court tells us, the chamber, that the principle of unity possibilities was a general principle and a rule of general scope for all cases of decolonization. So whenever you have a case of decolonization, unity possibilities is the principle. Although the first use of the principle involved the decolonization process of the Latin American colonies belonging to a single colonial power, which is Spain, mainly, apart from Brazil, Portugal and Brazil, the principle of unity possibilities, the chamber continued, is not a special rule which pertains solely to one specific system of international law, that is the Latin American system of international law. The court says it is a general principle which is logically connected with the phenomenon of the obtaining of independence wherever it occurs, including Africa. The chamber thus concluded it was for this reason that as soon as the phenomenon of decolonization characteristic of the situation in Spanish America in the 19th century subsequently appeared in Africa in the 20th century, the principle of unity possibilities failed to be applied. However, this depiction of unity possibilities as the general principle of international law to be applied in all decolonization situations has been challenged in recent scholarship. For example, by the Sudanese international lawyer Jardari Ahmed, who negotiated the right to self-determination for South Sudan. He argues that the unity possibilities was not a general principle of international law at the time of African decolonization and did not give rise to the concept of intangibility of integrated frontiers and was was as such inapplicable to Africa on independence. So he refuses the idea that when Africa was experiencing its moment of decolonization, UT positives was not the general principle. And he thinks the court was wrong in saying that it was the general principle. But he thinks African elites and leaders decided to apply this principle on their own because they found it the most efficient way of solving post-colonial boundary disputes. 2 points here. First, even if he refuses the idea of general applicability of this principle, he nonetheless accepts the idea that UT positives is a good thing because it has the potential of solving border or boundary disputes. Similarly, examining many of the constitutions of and treaties between Latin American states in the period following independence, Susan Lalonde challenges the mainstream position that the Latin American republics consistently accepted the UT positives principle in determining their new boundaries. Right? So she challenges this whole source of UT positives as a successful case study in Latin American context. And she came up with the idea of UT positives juries or UT positives de facto, but that's a different story. I don't need to take you there. But both of them challenge it. But what happens? Yet, the UT positives continue to dominate the international legal imagination in relation to boundary making. The principle was applied even in a non-colonial context following the breakup of the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia in his opinion number 3 concerning the question of whether the internal boundaries between Croatia and Serbia and between Bosnia and Herzegovina and Serbia should be regarded as frontiers for the purpose of public international law, the Paddington Commission that was established, if you remember, the Bosnian genocide. So right after the breakup of former Yugoslavia, this commission was established to solve that problem. What happened then? The Paddington Commission held that, in its opinion number 3, in the circumstances of the emergence of new states following the dissolution of former Yugoslavia, both the external and internal frontiers of Yugoslavia had to be respected. So even in a non-colonial context, the Paddington Commission used and applied the UT positives principle to sort out the mess that was created right after the breakup of former Yugoslavia, right? And Bosnian genocide was one of the follow-up events there. So here the Paddington Commission used this principle, even in a non-colonial context. The Commission categorically mentioned that this conclusion followed from the principle of the respect for the territorial status quo, and in particular from the principle of UT positives, which, though initially applied in settling decolonization issues, was recognized as a general principle as stated by the International Court of Justice in Burkina Faso and Mali case. In other words, the internal boundaries, remember, the internal boundaries of former Yugoslavia were converted to protected international frontiers, which could only be altered by agreement under this principle. The Commission also held in opinion number 2 that whatever the circumstances, the right to self-determination must not involve changes to existing frontiers at the time of independence, except where states concerned agree otherwise. That's the only exception, right? In other words, despite questionable universality of UT positives, the principle continued to dominate the international legal imagination regarding the making of post-colonial boundaries. The proposition that the continuation of colonial boundaries will avoid territorial conflicts between and among post-colonial states inform invariably all post-colonial and also non-colonial boundary settlements for new states. Even the critiques of the universality of the UT positives principle, like Ahmed, do not always break with this pragmatic relevance of the principle. Thus, while Ahmed refuses to accept the principle of the application of Latin American duty positives principle in the context of African decolonization as a general principle of international law, he refuses that, right? He nonetheless does not generally dismantle the continuity of colonial boundaries, understood as a unique and novel creation of an African customary international law for the pragmatic needs of avoiding chaos emanating from decolonization. This consensus on the pragmatic need of the continuation of colonial boundaries, along with the normative tone of the doctrine in general, is problematic. For, as I argue, far from being a corrective to potential chaos, the continuation of arbitrarily drawn colonial boundaries undermines the legitimate right to self-determination of numerous ethnic minorities in the post-colonial states and often results in violent ethnic conflicts. As we shall see in the following section, my specific case study here, the boundaries of present-day Myanmar were crafted by British colonial administration. These boundaries were then used by default for post-colonial Myanmar at the time of its independence in complete defiance of historical realities. I will demonstrate that the principle of the continuation of colonial boundaries or borders for post-colonial statehood has deprived the Rohingya and like many other minorities of this nature of their right to self-determination in that specific context, not in the present day situation, because you hardly can talk about self-determination now, and eventually lay in the present crisis. So that was my own understanding of international principles so far as the right to self-determination and its relationship with positives are concerned. Now I'll go into my specific case here, which will talk about the relationship between the making of post-colonial Burma, Myanmar, and the role of British Empire in fixing those borders at a precise moment of history. Now, talking about history is a problematic affair, and if any of you are interested in historiography, you would essentially know that history itself is a political project, right? One thing you can never accept is history as a body of objective knowledge, that this is the knowledge about something. As long as you can be rigorous in your research, as long as you are honest in your approach to the materials you are approaching and understanding and dealing with, that's one thing. But the way you offer your own narrative, it would be wrong to make that sharp line between objectivity and historiography and politics, of course, on the other hand. So the narrative or the kind of facts from history that anyone will use, to some extent that would be kind of the making of the story of their own choice to substantiate something. But as long as they are to some extent factually correct, there is some scope for engagement. So this is what I'll be doing here. So this is my story about the way international law played, or the international law principle of colonial boundaries played a role in this specific case, as I mentioned at the beginning of my talk. Now I'll go through kind of like snapshot of history in next 15 minutes time regarding how they are related to my first part of the story regarding international law and its role in post-colonial boundary making. Now, during the British rule, Rakhine state was known as Arakan, and that would be my reference to that. Now, Arakan, separated from the rest of Myanmar by a chain of mountains, maintained a distinct political identity for most of its history. Independent Arakan kingdoms can be traced back to antiquity, and the last of them was established in 1430. And there are lots of literature nowadays on the separate existence of Arakan and so forth. I will primarily focus on the role between the British engagement with boundary making here. Now, situated on the border between Buddhist and Muslim Asia, the kingdom had strong economic, trade, and other relations with the Sultanate of Bengal. In the official British narrative, the First Anglo-Burma War of 1824 to 1826, the century-old fort in Arakan and its defense arrangements received an admiring mention. The last independent kingdom of Arakan, after thriving for more than 350 years as a prosperous trading hub, came under Burmese control in 1784 and 85. By the late 18th century, the Burmese had developed a sense of pro-nationalism with a common language, a common religion, and a common set of legal and political ideas and institutions. Even a shared written history existed throughout the core area of the Ava Kingdom, the Upper Burma, and the Mandalay. Thus consolidated and unified, the Ava Kingdom enjoyed unprecedented power internally and externally, and by the turn of the 19th century, the Court of Ava would claim a series of spectacular successes on the battlefields. It was part of this expansionist campaign towards the western front of Mandalay, the Kingdom of Ava, that the annexation of Arakan took place in late 18th century, 1785. This annexation was indeed a massive operation and under the command of the Crown Prince at the time. The Arakanese capital city was taken and its king and many of his followers were captured on January the 20th in 1785. As soon as the victory was reported to the Burmese king, he ordered a great celebration on the 26th of January of the same year to mark this triumph over Arakan. The war against Arakan was officially conceived as a religious war. And you know this from the Royal Orders of Burma, like extensive translation of Royal Orders of Burma. So these are available online or in archives. You have copies in this library also. The mission to, so it was a religious war, a mission to re-Buddhicize Arakan. Since Buddhism was on the way in there, the new powerful Buddhist kingdom of Ava took on the responsibility of establishing Buddhism in the region. Like many imperial powers throughout history who have brought historic artifacts to their centers of power as a physical demonstration of authority and, or a part of the official narrative of a glorious past and its revival under their leadership, the Burmese king moved Mahamuni, the iconic great image of Buddha, from North Arakan to Amarapura, the capital of Ava, which is Mandalay. A Royal Order of Burma, so these are official Burmese documents. The Royal Order of Burma, dated 16 October 1784, makes the point clear. It says, I quote, "The Crown Prince shall march as Commander-in-Chief of Arakan campaign to restore proper conditions in Arakan for the prosperity of Buddha's religion. Although instructions on the conduct of Burmese forces in this campaign prohibited the forcible taking of any young woman or taking anything from the local people without payment, the Crown Prince was explicitly instructed to clear the place of all bad characters that included some Europeans, the Portuguese pirates in Arakan, so that Buddhism might prosper again there. A series of Buddhist missions were also sent to Arakan for the annexation with the task of re-Buddhicizing the area, and local authorities were repeatedly ordered to extend full support to these missions so that they could build ordination halls at places of their choice. Various other political changes were also imposed. A Royal Order of Burma of 14 October 1787 makes clear that since Arakan was now part of Burmese kingdom, the people of Arakan must not continue using their former seals and horns. Unsurprisingly, following the Burmese invasion, great numbers of native population fled from the cruelty and oppression of their conquerors, it will happen everywhere, and either found an asylum in the district of Chittagong or secreted themselves amongst the hills and heklets and alluvial islands along its southern and eastern boundaries. These Arakanese occasionally launched attacks on the invading Burmese in Arakan from within the British territory of Chittagong, which became by that time a colony of East India Company, thereby triggering tension between the Burmese kingdom and its new neighbor, the British. At the same time, this conquest brought a significant number of ritualists, astronomers, and other learned men from Arakan into the Abaco. The Arakanis had close contact with centers of knowledge in India and the wider Islamic world, and introduced important religious and secular texts on science, medicine, astrology to the Burmese, and Sanskrit and various other rituals from this side of the world became extremely popular there, especially Brahminism. With military, cultural, and intellectual rejuvenation, the Burmese kingdom engaged more assertively, although still cautiously, with the British. Captain Louis, the Deputy Commissioner, DC, of the Chittagong Hillcrafts, under the government of Bengal in the mid-19th century, records two early letters dated around June 1787 and sent by the King of Burma and the puppet Raja of Arakan to the British administration in Chittagong. These are among the earliest communications between Burma and the East India Company. These letters had a common theme, and I quote some part from that letter, two letters basically, from June. So it says, it's kind of like extract from a long letter. It says, some inhabitants of Arakan have absconded and taken refuge near the mountains within your border and exercise depredations on the people belonging to both countries. If you, so the Arakan Raja and the King of Burma is telling East India Company, if you do not drive them from your country and give them up, I shall be under the necessity of seeking them out with an army in whatever part of your territory they may be. Unquote. The threats were in fact real. For almost immediately after this correspondence, a force of armed armies entered Chittagong from Arakan. This incursion was reported to the Governor General Lord Cornwallis in the same month, June 1787, by the Chief of Chittagong. Again, in 1795, a Burmese army of 5,000 men invaded Chittagong to pursue some rebellious chiefs from Arakan. It is therefore evident that the tension was building up between the Burmese and the British authorities around the emigration of certain Arakanese chiefs and in the ensuing Burmese raids into British territories, of course, British colonial territories. At the macro level, there was a general sense of fear within the Burmese power circles about the East India Company's incessant expansion in India. Burma was next door. During the first 2 decades of the 19th century, the Burmese sent a number of missions to the Mughal court and established contacts with Nepal, Punjab, and Marathas, apparently, this is interesting, apparently to suggest forming an anti-British alliance, although no such alliance finally resulted, and this is based on Burmese source. The principal Burmese aim was to annex the area to the north of Arakan. Royal Burmese Royal Order, again, Burmese source, Royal Burmese Order of 16 September 1817 reveals their claim to a large area under British control, and I quote from that order. I've seen the primary document material, so you have to trust me on that. It says, it is not correct for the East India Company to take Chittagong, the whole Chittagong, Pamwa, which is Asim Bazar in West Bengal, Dhaka, and Murshidabad as English, right? They are Arakanese, and as Burmese has now taken Arakan, these places become Burmese. So we are talking about Dhaka, Murshidabad, Chittagong, and Kasim Bazar. The English, it continues, it says the English has no right to collect taxes there, unquote. A similar claim was made in an earlier royal order of 18 February 1817 that also expected the company, East India Company, to send back all Arakanese fugitives in Chittagong. Now, if you are very excited and angry about the recent claim from the Myanmar regime about St. Martin's, you have to understand the historical context. In a way, they have given up a huge territory, Dhaka, they are now focusing only on St. Martin's, right? So the combination of frontier trouble and increasingly belligerent designs by the Burmese on adjacent British territory led to the first Anglo-Burma War. So it was going on for a long time. I don't have time to talk about all those correspondence. So finally, it led to the first Anglo-Burma War of 1824 to 1826. The war was significant in opening many new and interesting regions to European access that the government of Bengal published a series of official documents about the war. So the war was very important, not only for the British, but also for all European establishment in the area, including Portuguese. The Oxford professor of Sanskrit, William Horace Wilson, was entrusted with the task of collecting, editing, and publishing these documents regarding the war. The British defeated the Burmese, and the two sides met on the 3rd of October 1825 to determine the terms of peace. As principal conditions of peace, the British demanded the cession of the 4 provinces of Arakan and the payment of 2 crores of rupees as an indemnification for the expenses of the war. Despite repeated refusal, the Court of Ava finally submitted to British demands and concluded a treaty on the 24th of February 1826, allowing the British to annex Arakan and Tenasserim, and which is part of Burma now, which happened to be part of Thailand now at the time, and subsequently incorporate them into British India. So this is how first Arakan became part of India, and gradually Burma would become part of India. This was a significant moment, especially for our purpose, in the political future of Burma. For the first ever, am I doing good on time? Yeah. Shall I? Yeah. That's the problem of reading out written text. Anyway, let me take this. I'll be quick, I'll skip some part. So this was a significant moment in the political future of Burma. For the first ever precise boundaries of Arakan were drawn up by the British in the aftermath of this war. Indeed, following the annexation of Arakan by Burma in 1785, the Burmese attempted to demarcate boundaries between Moroku, which happened to be the capital of Arakan under the last kingdom, and Thondu on the Arakan side, and Salin beyond the Arakan mountain range in the east. As the royal order of 14th of October 1787 reveals, the key motivation for this was to divide the land route from Arakan across the range, mountain range. Road officers were given the responsibility to keep this road open and well maintained down to Dale and Thondu. Officers had to take the responsibilities from the area, from Dale to Baai. Therefore, some sort of internal boundary demarcation was necessary. 2 more royal orders of November 1787 under the Arakan rule and December 1787 indicate further attempts at a more detailed account of the demarcation of boundaries between Moroku, Thondu, and Salin based on 3 more Arakanese reports of 1783. Various local headmen lodged complaints against the proposed demarcation, which led to the royal order for further investigation into the matter. So these are attempts by the Burmese, right, before they were taken over by the British to demarcate the boundary of Arakan with the mainland Burma, the Upper. These Burmese attempts at boundary demarcation were inward-looking and different in nature from what the British would achieve following the war of 18th first international boundary making under the colonial rule. In other words, the precise territorial demarcation of Arakan and its external boundaries with both the Kingdom of Burma and colonial India were essentially the creation of the British. Burmese defeat in 2 more Anglo-Burma wars in 1852 and 1885 resulted in complete British control over all of Burma. In 1886, Burma formally became a province of British India. Although there was a Rohingya community in Arakan long before the Burmese invasion of 1785, its size increased rapidly during the colonial times as a result of the British policy of expanding rice cultivation in Arakan. Rice cultivation, I can skip this part. So you know the stories about immigration and everything, right? So it is therefore no surprise that in the colonial policy discourse of the 1930s on separating Burma from India, which happened finally in 1935, and making it a crown colony, independent crown colony separated from India, the issue of immigration appeared to be the Burmese nationalist leaders' main concern. And then there was like British Parliamentary Roundtable Conference of 1930s, and immigration came up again and again. And the British finally separated Burma from India in 1937, making it a crown colony, right? And granted the colony a new constitution calling for a fully elected assembly. So with the split between British India and British Burma, the border between the two took on a semi-international status for the first time. In the aftermath of World War II and following fierce nationalist resistance to British rule, Burma became an independent country in January 1948 under the Independence Act, a British legislation, as a country now within His Majesty's dominions and not entitled to His Majesty's protection. But irony is, the boundaries of this newly independent nation crafted by His Majesty's colonial administration remain as they were. The semi-international boundaries became the fully international borders of Burma. The administrative boundary between Arakan and Bengal, as well as Inaugural boundary with Siam Island, became international frontiers of post-colonial Burma. As the leading historian in Myanmar, Nguyen Thu asserts, and is Burmese very respected historian, educated in Cambridge, he says, over the first couple of decades of colonial rule in Upper Burma, following the Third Anglo-Burma War of 1885, I quote, the remainder of the new country's frontiers were carefully negotiated and surveyed. In deciding what was Assam, Burma, Tibet, and China, the diplomats and cartographers of Fort William in Calcutta set the Indian-Burmese-Chinese border of today. Modern Burma thus included the entire heartland of the old kingdom of Ava, or the land of the Myanmar. But the map, he says, the map also included some, though not all, of our erstwhile tributaries and frontier regions, as well as places never even claimed, let alone ruled by the court of Ava. Right? And again, this is Burmese source. Although the kingdom of Arakan remained independent for hundreds of years before the British occupation in Arakan in 1825, and is under Burmese rule, and was under Burmese rule for a mere 40 years, the right to self-determination at the moment of decolonization or any other alternative political future for the people of Arakan in general and the Arakanese Muslims, the Rohingya in particular, was never given a serious thought during the decolonization process. It was straightforward application of the colonial boundaries. The incorporation of Arakan into independent Burma was unfortunately seen as the default position. As in the case of many other ethnic minorities within new post-colonial states in Asia and Africa, the political future of the Rohingya was thus made permanently subordinate to the state of Burma, the latter being the legitimate subject of international law and legally protected against challenges to its territorial integrity, the kind of election I mentioned at the beginning of the talk. The post-colonial boundaries of present-day Myanmar, unjust and an outcome of colonial imagination and convenience and controversy, have as their sources of legitimacy international law. This is also a stark reminder of how international law perpetuates colonial legacies and thereby further disempowers already vulnerable groups such as the Rohingya, leading to humanitarian catastrophes. However, the political resistance to the incorporation of Arakan into Burma was very quick to follow. And you know the resistance shortly after Myanmar's independence in 1948, a rebellion led by Rohingya Muslims erupted in Arakan, demanding equal rights and an autonomous Muslim area in the north of the state. It is also claimed by the Burmese nationalists that at the time of Burma's independence, the Rohingya not only formed their own army but also approached Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the key architect of Pakistan, asking him to incorporate Northern Arakan into East Pakistan, present Bangladesh. So, reverse claim can be made. I skip all those political aspects of these things and quickly jump to the conclusion. So, this is how I conclude this paper. The continuation of colonial boundaries in the politico-legal imagination of post-colonial statehood is an established norm of international law. Although some international lawyers challenge this general application of the unity positives principle as a legally binding rule of international law, they nonetheless accept the pragmatic need for this principle for maintaining peace and stability. Ironically, as the example of the Rohingya crisis reveals, what seemed to be a solution at the time of decolonization turned out to be a recipe for humanitarian catastrophe as the post-colonial nation building project failed. It would be inappropriate to settle on the unity positives principle as the obvious reason behind this kind of crisis in post-colonial states that I made very clear at the beginning. It would be wrong, right? This cannot be the only reason. In the case of the Rohingya crisis, various other elements have contributed to this situation. And international law also contributed to many of those situations, or reasons, or causes. There is a need, therefore, for further research on how, in the absence of stable democratic institutions, nation-building projects and the suppression of ethnic groups go unchallenged in post-colonial states. Moreover, it needs to be exposed how, due to its normative reliance on individualism as well as weak enforcement mechanisms, international law often fails to offer any adequate protection to the vulnerable groups. The Rohingya crisis in Myanmar provides a perfect illustration of these arguments, offering a powerful reminder of the deep, enduring crisis of post-colonial statehood and its problematic engagement with international law in general. The following discussion on the role of international law in the making of post-colonial boundaries and the Rohingya crisis in Myanmar sets the necessary premise for this potential larger project on post-colonial statehood and international law. The normative significance of the present paper beyond the Rohingya crisis remains in this fact. And I stop here. Thank you very much. So, apparently you have 20 minutes and I'm happy to take some questions if there is any.
Thank you so much, sir, for your enlightening lecture on the issue that is very much contemporary in international law as well as international relations. So now we can take some questions from the audience. If you have questions, please raise your hand, introduce yourselves, and take the question.
That's absolutely fine if there is no question.
Now, you can understand that you have not yet studied international law, but you can make any question relating to the topic. Okay.
Third year. At first, I articulate sincere thanks to you for participating with us. As we know that Article 13, Subsection 2, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948 provides that everyone has the right to live in country, including his own, to return to his country. So far, the Rohingya refugees have the legitimate right to be repatriated to their ancestors' homes with due and security. My question to you, how is possible such mechanism, we can say, due safety and security, how can ensure and repatriation ensure? Thank you, sir.
The Masters of Law student, Masters of Law in Bangladesh University of Professionals. My question to you is, from your lecture, I sort of thought that you are suggesting that currently the Rohingyas, may be living here in Bangladesh or staying in Bangladesh or in Myanmar, they cannot possibly claim self-determination. Is that it, or did I understand it differently? I would like a bit of clarification on that point. Thank you, sir.
My name is Irfan Mistake. I'm from Bracket University. You emphasize about arbitrariness about the demarcation. So if you emphasize these things a little bit more, and why it is actually important. Another thing you emphasize that about a colonial borders must be respected. As it was repeated, why in that sense every time we should respect those persons. Okay. Yeah. I would like to add another thing. Please emphasize on the thing that be positively principle. I didn't get positivity principle. Right, sure. Thank you.
Your question first, Ishan. So arbitrariness of borders, and we talked about why colonial boundaries have to be respected and the principle of duty positivities. Let me recap. So duty positivities is the principle under international law that says colonial boundaries must be respected. And I'm very much with you who thinks that this should not be the inherent case that under all circumstances colonial boundaries must be respected. And my argument in this paper was that this principle that colonial boundaries have to be respected was the part of the problem, because it denied, and that links to the second question, that denied the right to self-determination. So because of the principle, and that was Amina's question, I think, so Amina's question. So the principle of duty positivities, that colonial boundaries must be respected, that means that continuity of colonial boundaries to post-colonial states deny the right to self-determination to various groups in various post-colonial countries, and they are connected, right? And that moment was lost because of the hard and fast application that colonial boundaries have to be respected. So what happened to be Burma under the British colonial rule, which was very arbitrary, as I gave you the historical narrative of how various wars expanded the meaning of Burma, and even the Burmese historians and scholars are saying how even territories on which Burma itself never claimed any right or never ruled became also part of Burma, had to be continued. And that continuation meant the denial of right to self-determination of people, in this case the people of Arakan taken as a whole. I mean, of course, within the Arakan you have other problems, Muslim and other local Buddhist Arakans, but that's a different story. The point here is, because of this continuity of this principle, Arakan became part of Burma, even if they ruled that territory only for 40 years. And that's quite surprising, right? So, and that is the problem of international law, because international law has so much obsession about this idea of territorial integrity, and it is always reflected in the way the right to self-determination sort of stories appear, right? Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? That's a question to discuss, and you can always, or one can always take side on that. Is there any question for clarification on these 2 points? Because it will be easier for me to clarify these ideas a bit more on these 2 specific questions before I go to Mahmoud's question on human rights.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Ask you, are you actually suggesting that the abolishment of absolute duty positivities? I mean, thank you.
It is a project on understanding how international law shaped the political imagination of post-colonial state at a precise moment of history, and what consequence it has today. Now, in today's world, it will be difficult or to some extent even irrelevant to dismantle this idea because you hardly have any colonial context now. Can states, so in this specific case, if it is not a kind of advocacy for abolition of duty positives principle, what I was trying to demonstrate, and I think it got it right to some extent, I was a bit implicit as opposed to explicit regarding a possible policy direction for the Rohingya crisis, right? But this is not my subject. Since you have highlighted that, let me talk a bit on that issue. So in the context, in the current situation in Bangladesh, so far as the Rohingya is concerned, most of the debate and discussion is pretty much reduced to the idea of massive human rights violation, which is bad. We are talking about genocide, which is documented, and Imran, I think, and his colleague from Liberation War Museum have done excellent work. Imran, you owe me a copy of that book, by the way. So, and prosecuting some Myanmar army generals under international criminal law, if possible under ICC, if you can establish the jurisdiction. My idea would be, it is just a small part of the broader problem. So if you even prosecute some army generals, what people should do, people should not enjoy impunity for this kind of gross violations of human rights, but at the same time, it is not going to solve the problem for the Rohingya on a long-term basis. So, to some extent, discourse on self-determination in whatever form that can be a viable way of getting into the debate. In whatever form you can think of, power sharing, regional autonomy. So this will offer you a much better protection going beyond those ideas of prosecuting some Myanmar general and some send them back. Of course, that should be the case, right? What happens after you send them back? So what, in my view, is relatively absent is this idea of some sort of self-determination. And there's a good reason for that, because Myanmar is not a kind of unique case, perhaps a bad case, but post-colonial states in general, in Africa, in Asia, and for that matter in any part of the world, are somehow nervous and worried to talk about this right to self-determination for their various ethnic groups, because all countries have their own problems. Right? So even if you are sympathetic for one minority in one particular country, when you look internally, you take a very different position. So this is one of the reasons, I believe, why countries are not very open to talk about this right, rather they're focusing on international criminal law kind of. So the idea is that to punish some folks and all problems are solved. If you take a critical approach to this idea of criminal justice, it is in a sense a tool to hide and obscure the broader questions of structural injustice. That one, so crime, forget international law, even in municipal law, crime and punishment, if you take a critical stance, is a tool to hide structural issues of injustice, of discrimination. So some folks commit crimes, you treat them individually, you bring them before the court, and if you establish and exercise and celebrate rule of law, that in this society you commit crime, you are punished. Right? And that's it. So society is doing a great job, state is doing a great job. But at the same time, this exercise and imagination of undoing wrong through criminal administration system hides the structural injustice of the society that will continue to produce criminals. It will sustain and create a condition in which there will be proliferation of crimes. But this criminal justice administration system highlights that fact. So in essence, this justice administration itself, so-called rule of law itself, can be seen as a tool to sustain that asymmetric power relations and the structures of social justice. And now I know I sound very cynical, but this is one way of understanding and engaging with the system. Now if you take this to the Rohingya scenario, the story is pretty much the same. You prosecute certain army generals and you have this moment of achievement that you have done, but it's not going to solve the problem because the problem is structural. And in this project, which is going to be a book, it is not only the boundary that I'm talking about. I'm also interested in the political economy, the role of international institutions, how the UN country chief, you know her because she was in Bangladesh for some years, not with very good reputation. she knew at least 5 years before this thing happened in August in the most brutal, she knew it. And UN took a deliberate position to suppress any report, even by her colleagues, about the gravity of the situation. Because development was important. Myanmar is suddenly a democracy has opened up, it's a big pie, and all global power actors wanted a certain part of that pie. Myanmar was busy signing MOU and trade deals. Therefore, everyone was quite happy to sacrifice human rights issues. And you have to take this broader context into account. Right? So this is one story. And going back to the role of human rights, again, the same story. Human rights is a great thing. That's my career, that's my bread and butter, that's how I earn my living, talking about human rights and how great that is. But at the same time, is this a violation of human rights? Yes, it is a gross violation of human rights. But you can't really understand why countries fail to be punished when they go for this kind of gross violations of human rights, precisely because of the points I mentioned before. Because human rights as an idea does not operate in vacuum. It is an essential part of a broader global political design. The human rights that we know today is essentially a creation of 1945 movement of the UN. Of course, I know that we romanticize by talking about Cicero and the idea of human rights in natural law in a kind of anachronistic way of doing history. But it is, or it was a political project. The human rights we know today, this liberal version of human rights was an essential element of the liberal economic model that was put forward at the same time under the Bretton Woods institutions. So this is at one level. On the other level, and as I was mentioning briefly in the other chapter, that this approach, liberal approach to human rights is not really adequate when it comes to group-oriented measures. I have published a book actually that explains why the traditional idea of human rights is inadequate to deal with situations of this kind. More importantly, as I gave the example of UN country chief in Myanmar and their approach to human rights at the time when the process was in making, human rights at the same time is a political language of power. That doesn't excuse us from applying human rights norms in everyday life that we should continue. But at the same time, we have to understand how human rights itself is used as an imperial language. Iraq was bombarded and millions got killed to establish human rights. Right? So you kill people to establish human rights for them. So that is another aspect of human rights. Right? Countries which have terrible records of human rights violations in their own country, against their own people of color, will continuously publish global human rights index and reports for other countries. Right? But that doesn't mean that we should not live by the principles of human rights that we have signed for. But you have to take those ideas with some pinch of salt. Right? And this is precisely why human rights does not have the teeth, sharp teeth, that it should have to bring regimes like the one you have in Myanmar before justice. Because it is entangled in the broader questions of power. When BBC journalists went to Myanmar to investigate the role of the UN country chief, 10 ambassadors and high commissioners, all big powers including US and the UK, they sent unsolicited emails to BBC journalists saying, she is doing a great job, UN country chief. She was in fact doing a great job, not for the people of Myanmar, forget Rohingya. She was doing a great job precisely for those countries because Myanmar was signing international trade deals. And the army thought, we are a partner now and this is the precise time for going for a big action. That's the role of human rights.
Any other question?
I'm Raif Kabir. I'm doing Masters of Law in BUP. So at the point, first I would like to thank you for your lecture, and specifically for choosing this topic, which is really an issue right now. Sir, the thing is, although my question is not directly linked to your specific topic, how do you suggest a solution to this crisis? I would like to specifically talk about the international organizations and their role, and how do you suggest a solution so that this crisis is informed? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm Farhan from first year. So my question is, Myanmar agreed to start the repatriation process to take back Rohingyas in Myanmar. But according to the agreement, they will take only 1,500 Rohingyas in Myanmar per week. So this will take 10 years to repatriate all the Rohingyas to Myanmar. But can Bangladesh take the help of international law to force Myanmar to take the responsibility of the Rohingyas in these coastal bazar camps during these 10 years?
Assalamu alaikum, sir. My name is Wakil Hassan. I'm from second year honors BUP. My question was, adding to the previous question, we have learned that post-colonial boundaries are one of the biggest reasons of Rohingya crisis, and we've learned that these boundaries were created without political and social reality check. So what I wanted to know is, if you could travel back in time, what could have been done differently to draw these post-colonial boundaries to change this reality that we have now come to the point of Rohingya crisis? Thank you.
Really made me happy, and that tells a lot about the quality of training you are having here. So, yeah, so there's an idea called counterfactual history. Have you heard of this idea? So it's about, it's something more than thinking on hindsight, but it's more about a creative exercise of rewriting the history of international law, or for that matter, any law, or how it could have been different. In this project, I'm not doing that because this is a much more creative exercise. But in general, that's the answer to this question, because the borders were supposed to be arbitrary. Given that the motivation for drawing those borders were very different, and the actors were very different, and actors are focused on their interests. So from our point of view, it is, or it looks irrational, right? But for their point of view, that was the rational thing to do. So it's not that it was arbitrary from their point of view. It was essentially the inflation, and they invested huge resources, right, figuring how to do it in the most efficient way. I did another work on interest, and so it was arbitrary now from our point of view, but it was not really arbitrary from their point of view, the kind of objective they wanted to achieve, right? So the question is less relevant now, how that would have been different. The more relevant question is actually what implications that we experience because of that arbitrariness reading from our side. And if you can get there, I think in this paper that is exactly what I was trying to get, that how it can create an environment in which this kind of things can happen. So that was my point. And was it the biggest reason? I would qualify that again. It was definitely one of the important reasons. But I thought biggest reasons would be something else. It can be the failure of nation building in a way, and that's a whole new story and how it's related to that. It can be international law approach to minority rights as a whole, because there are many post-colonial states, and in not all post-colonial states you have problems of this kind. So definitely they have experienced or learned something from their experience, and there might be a possibility of learning from those experiences. But in general, most of these post-colonial states suffer problems when it comes to how to deal with people of different groups. And again, it would be wrong to think that in a preemptive way, let me answer this question, that all problems are created by the East India Company. Right? I think we have to take some responsibility on our own, and that talks about the overall failure of nation building. Right? And the dilemma I talked about, on the one hand you have a nationalist audience, because it is the nationalist movement that creates these states, but at the same time you have a very different audience which is international liberal audience when it comes to constitution. So the biggest challenge for any post-colonial regime, be it India, Pakistan, or Bangladesh, or any country from Nigeria, the biggest challenge is to how to reconcile these two very different audiences. On the one hand, you have this nationalist movement, for example, India nationalist movement, and they have their expectations, they have their national symbolism, and so on and so forth, in terms of language, religion, and so on and so forth. And then you have an international audience, because next morning, after having achieved your national state, you also want to be a part of international society. You want to be a member of UN. And UN has a very specific template. Unless you sign up for that, you are not a member of that society, right? So that 1945 or post-1945 template of liberal constitutionalism, which is very much individualistic, does not always match with this audience, which is a kind of nationalist group based, in some cases, in the case of Myanmar, it is nothing short of zeroism. So it's a constant challenge. Some countries have better history, better figures, better visions to deal with those issues. Some countries have worse. And it changes over time for various issues. So the story is very complex. And if you are really interested, I hate doing that. But it's not don't take this as a kind of marketing exercise, but you will find some of the ideas in the book that I have already published. Right. Now, other question. What is the role of PILT in sending? I think that's my profession, but I think solution remains more in international relations rather than international law. So if you talk about the temporary way of sending these Rohingya back to their country of origin, Bangladesh has to definitely work with international community and must not stop putting more pressure. Not sure to what extent we do, but it seems like that's the only way of going. Law is not going to be very helpful. Right. And outside Bangladesh context, the kind of crisis we have seen between Iran and the US, International Court of Justice said something. It took hours for their State Department to say that, oh, we are not going to bother about it. So in that difficult situation and global environment, are we less excited about the role of international law, or focus more on diplomacy and diplomacy and all sorts of Myanmar overall has been a kind of notorious bilateral partner. If you follow the history of previous negotiations, so it has to be some kind of external pressure that might make them do things in the way we want them to do. And Arif asked a question about the solution of the crisis. It's a huge question. I mean, if I had answers to these questions, most possibly I've been near advising UN Security Council, but so far as this project is concerned, as I mentioned before, perhaps we should start thinking more about, or go beyond about international criminal law framework. We should do that, but we have to think about long-term solutions, and I think we have to start that conversation with Myanmar at some opportune moment. I think that is very important that we think about long-term possibilities, otherwise it will come back again and again and again.
We know that you have many questions, but we have to stop here. Last question. Okay, so two last questions. Dr. Siddiq sir,
So, as a overproportionate country, Bangladesh is not capable to provide all basic needs to Rohingya. At this moment, repatriation is pressing. So my question is to you, how to make easy and speedy repatriation in collaboration with UN, with harmony. And my second question is there any possibility to repatriate any other countries, third countries?
Offensive realism in the state of behavior. So we are too tiny in comparison of North Korea and in comparison of our capacity. But doesn't it actually render us to be more offensive realism based approaches like a country like Bangladesh that can actually stop this kind of that can actually not stop, but that can actually help us to negotiate in an international level. And because we think it's only Rohingya, there may be the case of Assam. So I just want to have your insight on these two issues, whether it is possible. Thank you.
Interesting question, because you usually don't seek advice from an international lawyer regarding how to be an offensive actor, right? You do just the opposite. But the question is, do you really want to be like Kim Jong-un as a nation? The other thing is practical challenges, like do you have the means to be offensive, right? So I don't think we are in a position that allows us to do that. And I think that is kind of connected with Parth's question regarding solutions or third party and interpretation. What is the quickest way of doing that? If I have to say something about this to the individuals who make important foreign policy decisions, I think in this case, one must not undermine the influence of China. Traditionally, for those big international events, we primarily relied on USA, UK, and those kind of Western blocs, but it will be very hard to put adequate and sufficient pressure on the Myanmar regime bypassing China. And I will give you one concrete example. When the Rohingya crisis was unfolding, I follow Japan very closely because I lived there, I taught there, and it is one of my research interest areas. Japan was following the lead of those liberal Western countries who were signing treaties with Myanmar, and Japan invested a lot of money for illegal reform in Myanmar. And when any country from G8 bloc start spending money in any country for legal reform, they show that huge amount of foreign direct investment is coming. So legal reform is a protection for that. Japan was doing that. And Japan was very late, given its very strong presence in Southeast Asian countries. It has to be much more proactive compared to US or UK. Japan was very late in responding to the crisis. And I have followed NHK for a long period of time, NHK News, regarding their treatment of the Rohingya crisis. And it was always very act of balance. It was a very balancing act. So if this is something about, and the Universal Myanmar Army did that, some people did that, but Rohingya terrorists also, so they always use terrorists and these kind of things. And it changed. It changed in a dramatic way. They are very critical of Suki, they are very critical of the regime, they are very critical of army, they are asking for prosecution because Japan got the lesson. Myanmar has gone back to Chinese bloc again. It's very obvious. So this concrete example is clearly the center of power, and North Korea is definitely playing the same card. Right? So it will be very hard for Bangladesh Partho to put adequate pressure on the Myanmar regime bypassing China, because Security Council, I know that they are very much on board on this issue in Bangladesh to put some pressure on Myanmar regime in Security Council. China is very likely to know that. So Bangladesh has to somehow bring China in confidence, and I think we are geographically or geopolitically quite well placed to do that. Now the question is whether the current regime is going to play that card efficiently, because it will create other problems on the other side of the boundary. So that's a different question. I can't speak for that. But Bangladesh is geopolitically very well placed to play that card, and as a nation, we have actually done that. The change of regimes after every 5 years was, in a sense, was a balancing act so far as foreign policy is concerned. So I think it is a very good possibility is for the people in decision-making positions to make that decision. Right.
Thank you so much for your in-depth analysis on this issue that is Rohingya crisis that is happening right now. And really, I'm really proud that the students of our department, they have been asking so many questions, so critical questions to our keynote speaker. And yes, this is one of the purposes of university, to think critically. And I think from this lecture, you have got many things to think again, to revisit again, and again you can do research in future times. So once again, thank you so much, sir, for your time, for your passion to the relation with students and to come to this beautiful campus of Bangladesh University of Professionals. With this, we end our lecture here. But before we end, we would like to take a group photo with our keynote speaker. So I'm requesting the participants to come over here and take a group photo.